So today we're looking at the default systems that our governments rely on to deal with the so-called refugee crisis. These include deterrence, harsh, hostile policies designed to put people off coming here in the first place, detention, containing those who come separately from society, and deportation, evicting them out of the country altogether. All of these are part of a wider strategy called externalization. Nathan, we're going to ask you to explain that term in a moment, but I just want to make a quick media storm point on language. It's noticeable that the words we use to describe these policies are often highly euphemistic and bloodless, words like deterrence or returns or closed borders, but in reality these concepts are often far from bloodless. Now, Nathan, what is meant by externalization and how common is it in migration policy today?
Yeah, I guess in very simple terms, it's pushing our border policies out into other countries. I mean, migration is a very contentious issue. We don't stop talking about it, but I think most people have this quite straightforward mental model that is about how open or closed the border should be, depending on your political opinion. And I think that misses the massive systemic complexity of all of this, because we're not just talking about who does or doesn't get turned back at the entry point to your national border, but this very, very large system and this expanding system where other countries are coerced or paid to act as border guards and enforcers on behalf of usually wealthy Western states. Now, there's a lot of ways in which this takes place. One is funding, training, and cooperation with violent armed groups and security forces with the aim of preventing people from moving. There's then this kind of carrot and stick politics, a foreign policy that rewards countries that accept subordination and alignment to European or North American border regimes and punishes those that don't through restricting visa access and things like that. There's mass surveillance machinery, so deploying equipment, collecting data on people and creating interoperable systems to surveil people migrating and increasingly just everyone in general. Then there's the creation of carceral infrastructure outside EU borders. Your British listeners, the Rwanda plan will probably be the most relevant example. I'm currently in Brussels. The EU Parliament this week is voting on a deportation regulation that would remove legal barriers to these offshore detention camps that would send people to places they've never been, have no connection to. And it is hard to overestimate the scale of this, right? We're talking about deals with dozens and dozens of countries, huge amounts of resources, and usually occurring along the same lines that traditional colonial hierarchies did.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive overview. And it's really important to speak about what this actually looks like in real life. We'll go through this stage by stage, but Mohammed, let's bring you in here. During your journey, Europe's externalized border reached you when you arrived in Libya after crossing the Sahara Desert. Libya is one country the EU pays to stop people before they cross into Europe. You were arbitrarily imprisoned there by EU-funded security forces, and you saw how others were treated as well. Do you think people in Europe need to understand about what happens inside that system that their governments are paying for?
A lot of common European people do not understand why and how their countries or the policymakers are supporting those people in order to manage what they call is migration management. But in fact, this is a way that to fund a lot of detention centers, prisons, where people tortured and beaten for so many times, so many years inside the detention centers. I personally talked about my experience in Libya from 2020 to 2023. The European people should understand that these taxes are not going to support people or not going to solve any problems. In fact, creating new damages. People are dying, women are raped. We received so many messages through our hotline, videos that people are asking to help. So for me, that's the idea that the common European people can understand that this money are not going to save people. Actually, it's going to kill a lot of migrants and refugees in Libya.
And also something I recently learned that completely shocked me was another militia that was funded by the EU to control migration besides those in Libya that extort and torture and rape, as you say, routinely. Another one was the Sudanese rapid support forces helping to create such devastation in Sudan, your country, Mohammed. And this is one of the reasons, that you, I imagine, had to leave your home. And that militia used to be funded by the EU to control migration. Hemeti, the general in charge, used to parade around boasting about controlling Europe's borders, and now has been found by most rights groups to be perpetrating genocide in the region. I did not know that the RSF was among those militias, and I was really, really shocked to find out. But Nathan, what alarming new tactic have we also started to see Libyan anti-migrant militias employ to block people on the Mediterranean Sea?
The Libyan Coast Guard, and I say that in heavy quote marks, was created out of the remains of the Gaddafi-era navy, and meant that European money was going in not to helping Libyans, not to helping refugees, but to building out and equipping this new military force, which had one job: to intercept people seeking safety and drag them back to the horrific conditions that you've just heard described. And there's been incidents of them violently interfering with rescues for a long time now. But what's striking in the last year is that there's been 3 cases in 10 months of them opening fire on civilian rescue ships. And in one case, the case of the Ocean Viking last year, I was just talking last night actually to a young crew member who was on his first ever mission when he was fired at for a full 20 minutes in an attack that shattered the windows on the bridge at head height and caused, I think, over 150 grand's worth of damage to rescue equipment and could have been lethal. And these attacks were carried out from boats paid for by the EU, former Italian Guardia di Finanza boats. So I think there's an interesting question here where border control gets framed as protecting Europeans when actually it's handing over money to hostile foreign military forces that put European rescue workers, along with everyone else, at severe and potentially lethal risk.
Now, Mahamat, you also met the sharp edge of European deterrence at the border between Morocco and Spain. You survived the massacre at the Melilla-Nador border in June 2022, where dozens of people were killed trying to cross from Morocco into the Spanish enclave. Almost all were fleeing Sudan. You witnessed it, you lost friends that day. Spanish and Moroccan officials said that their border guards had been assaulted and had to fight back in self-defense. And the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, said the incident was a well-organized violent assault by organized crime groups, and thanked Spanish and Moroccan security forces for their actions. So that's sort of the version of events that was publicized across Europe. As someone present, how would you characterize the events that day?
Well, the event of 24th of June 2022, as we name it, it's as a racist massacre ever happened in the contemporary of history. As the Spanish and Moroccan police said, they were defending themselves, but actually that's not. Because when we came down from the mountains, we already found them ready to massacre. We have been locked to some space where we cannot out. We have been beaten. For example, people are crying. There is the humiliation that we saw. We have been through. It is absolutely reveals that this is not absolutely defending themselves. There is a lot of people who died and who also remain missing, is hundreds of them. Those who also, at least survivors, had been prisoners for over 5 years. I personally lost my close friend in that situation, and there is a lot of people who also did not find their relatives, their friends, their family, who has been asking for so many years also if they are still alive or not. The Europe who is trying to protect its border in such situations, it means that even if takes thousands of people who died or remain massacred, it means also just to save their borders. It could not be right, because those people also are humans and maybe seeking just for something called peace and protections. When I come to remind such situation, it feels like why this is happening. Is it all about saving borders, or it's also something behind of this? For me, those people who is still seeking for their justice should be recognized, especially in the 24th of June.
Absolutely.